There's Connie.
Perfect. Then I think we have everybody we need to get started. Am I correct, Malia?
I believe so. It sounds like Jerry Coles will be jumping on shortly, but we can go ahead and start. The recording is in progress.
Perfect. Then for the record, I'll introduce myself as Commissioner Lindsay Fowler. We are here for the Medication and Safety Committee meeting. I'd ask Ms. Parkman to take roll call, please.
Okay, for the record, my name is Karen Parkman. I'm the program coordinator for the agency. And today we have Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Stein,
Here.
Director Nguyen.
Here.
Okay. I don't see Mike Twiggs. Is Mike Twiggs here? Okay.
Okay, then at this point, I will ask if there's a motion to approve the agenda for the meeting today.
I move to approve the agenda.
Perfect. All in favor? I'll second
Aye.
that. All in favor? I
Aye.
think it's just us. Okay, then moving on, let's move on to the old business where we are discussing the amendment of Oregon Administrative Rules 462-150-0050 sub 2. It looks like we've received the proposed edits to that amendment. And so I will ask if anybody has further comments on that. I'm not sure what we're supposed to do with this amendment here today.
Yeah, so during the last meeting, it was brought up that we wanted to make sure we have a discussion on this with the Fair Meat people and hopefully with Jerry on the call to discuss how that might affect the Fair Meat attendance. Is that correct, Dr. Stein?
I believe so, yes.
So, and just to recap, this statute, this would preclude a horse from racing more than they wouldn't be able to race 2 days in a row. They'd have to have 2 days in between to race. And I'm hoping that maybe what we need to do, unless people have comment right now, is wait until Jerry comes on, because he's the one that actually sets the races. I would open up to the public to see if there's any comment on this. This is one of the things we wanted to do. And here comes Jerry as we speak.
Perfect timing.
Okay, here I am.
We were just talking about you. So, Jerry, one of the things that we wanted to do on this call, Dr. Stein thought it was important to have you here, as did Dr. Lombard and other members of the committee, is to address how it would, I know that you sent some information out to some people, how you believe it would impact the race meets if we required them to have 2 rest days between for the horses.
Okay. Well, after just looking at the numbers, off the top of my head, I mean, obviously it's going to impact field size and more than likely number of races, unless we want to run, you know, some 3-horse fields, which nobody really likes. I mean, when you look at it, there was, you know, at the Prineville meet, that would have affected 16 starters between the thoroughbred and the quarter horse, and Tillamook, that's for 23 starters. So if you take that out of the equation, that's really going to drop your field size. And I mean, I'm sure we're not going to fill the same number of races that we did last year.
So one question that I had, Jerry, is is there a way to write the races knowing this that might help? For example, making sure that races on Friday, or if it's Friday through Monday, which none of them are, but just as an example, to have races on Friday that are similar to races on Monday, or is that just out of the question?
No, I mean, I kind of do that anyway on, at those two meets. I'll have some races on Wednesday and I'll come back with either the identical race or something real similar on Saturday, which gives them 2 days rest. But then there's always, there's other races in there where, they might run on Wednesday and then they decide to, try a different distance or a different class level, and then they'll wheel right back on Friday instead of waiting until Saturday.
Jerry, I have a question that things are changing a little bit here. We've changed the medication rules, and I'm a little concerned that where in previous years, horses that raced and came back the next day would have bute in them. We don't have that anymore. I'm really concerned with the veterinary process of examining these horses, let's say the following day that they raced. So I'm concerned that when we use figures from previous years, I know it's a guideline, but things have changed. Now, unfortunately, I've spoken to one of the most respected surgeons in the country that's from New Jersey. And I asked her at the recent convention I was at that is there any data in terms of horses racing back that quickly? And quite frankly, she said no, and that it's really a question of the fitness of these horses, the responsibility of the trainers, the racetracks themselves. I mean, we really we're dealing with so many variables with this, but she did caution one thing, and I think we all need to be mindful of it, that much of the legislation that we pass these days are for the consumption of the legislatures that we have to deal with. And that it sounds, you can take all the, reasoning we're looking at, field sizes, et cetera. But if a horse breaks down that raced Wednesday back Thursday or Wednesday back Friday, we are going to be under a whole lot of criticism. And I think we need to be mindful of that. And it really takes, a responsibility of all horsemen that it doesn't take a whole lot these days to get legislation out there to prohibit racing, etc. And a further thing I would say, I'm actually less concerned about quarter horses at the fairs that go 250 yards. I don't really see that as a situation that is prone to breakdown, since they don't really go that far. Thoroughbreds, I was shocked to see, Jerry, the numbers that you showed up of thoroughbreds that came back, on short rest.
Yeah, I was
and-
too. There'd be quite that many.
Yeah. But that's my concern, that it only takes one to really mess things up.
Well, I know a lot of the horsemen, when they go to Prineville and Tillamook, because they run 4 days and they travel, most of them would like to run twice at that meet, and we only run 8 races the first day on Wednesday, so I can't, all the horses on the grounds wanting to run, we can't run them all on one day is the thing. So, yeah, that's, I don't know.
So it sounds to me like it would affect these fair meets a lot more than we previously thought when we were discussing this.
I think so, yeah. When you look at, and these numbers, let's say, I did count the horses that did run twice and had 2 days off in that email. You know, there was 6 quarter horses and 6 thoroughbreds at Prineville and 3 quarter horses and 6 thoroughbreds at Tillamook that ran on Wednesday and came back Saturday. So there was quite a few more that just had 2 days off. I mean, 1 day off.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think the thing that you will do with this is if we go, Jerry, and you correct me or jump in, but it makes Wednesday is usually pretty easy to find because it gives the trainers an option then to run again.
Yeah.
So then it will take the trainer and say, okay, I'm not going to run on Wednesday because I'm only going to get a run once. So I'm going to run on Friday instead. But we average 6 horses a race at Tillamook. You take 24 horses out of those starters, that's 4 races we're short.
Yeah. Yeah, it would. I mean, Prineville and Tillamook, it would have a pretty big impact on field size and number of races.
In Prineville, they've actually been adding races. I'm not concerned about Prineville. I don't think it's going to impact them.
Well, I think they run
8, 8, 10, and
8, 8, 8, 10, 10.
And that's the way it's been for a long time at Prineville. And we run 8, 8, 8, and 9 at Tillamook.
Yeah.
Is it a concern that the horsemen don't have the opportunity to race, or is it field size that we're dealing with? I mean, from my standpoint, field size is related to mutual handle, and realistically, mutual handle is not funding the purses. And if it's horsemen having opportunities to race, you know, I don't want them to be shut out. At the same time, I don't want people to race horses because they're so desperate to earn something. And it's a real quandary. Not for, I mean, Grants Pass is the whether it be the commercial or the fair meet, which is not an issue because that they can
Correct.
race every week for the entire time.
Yeah.
But and Tillamook, again, days 1 and 4 is not an issue, and the same with Prineville. Days 1 and 4 are not an issue. I think if we could, try to rework this so that, I mean, if we're dealing, Jerry, I'll ask you, when you use those numbers, are those, I think we need to look at the field, not only, I think we need to look at the field sizes of the 1 back 3 versus the 1 back 4, because we're not eliminating day 1 and 4, because that fits. But if they're racing on days 1 and 3 or 1 and 2, how
Well, I
is
think
that
a
with
lot of
field
them,
size?
you don't really see too many of them run 2 consecutive days in a row. I mean, once in a blue moon, but I think that horse that broke down last year at Prineville was one of those that ran 2 days in a row. But you really don't see that often. So a lot of them will run that one or run twice. They'll run Wednesday and Friday, or Wednesday and Saturday, and then some of that will run on Thursday and Saturday.
And the field sizes of those, what I'm asking is, are we going from a 6-horse field to an 8-horse field because a horse has raced days 1 and 3 or days 2 and 4, or are we talking 5 down to 4? That's my concern.
Yeah, I'd have to look back at that and figure that out.
But I think you're very close, Commissioner Stein, and that is 5-4 is probably about what you're looking at. We only have a 7-horse gate at Tillamook. And so again, I know 2 years ago, we didn't have as many horses and we scratched a lot of the fields down to 3. We had one field that ran with 2, by the time they entered, and then they couldn't get through the vet checks. So we scratched. So again, last year, we're fortunate. We didn't have any, I think we had 1 4-horse field was all last year. But I think that's 5-4 or trying to use a different race, maybe that has 5 in it instead of using a race. We didn't use any races with 4 head. But we had
off the top of my head, I remember when I was looking at that, counting the horses, there was a couple of races that there was like 2 horses that, in that one race that wouldn't be able to come back and run.
Commissioner Fowler, I have a comment if I'm allowed.
You are allowed, Dr. Lombard, and I also saw that Rod had his hand up. So Rod, I'll come to you next. Go ahead, Dr. Lombard.
So real quickly, we don't have very good statistics compiled from the past several years, but between 2013 and 2019, not a single horse that broke down at an Oregon track had run back sooner than 10 days. I also want to echo what Commissioner Stein, I don't know what we're supposed to call you these days, Commissioner Stein said, is that it just takes one, right? And we did have one last year, and that's not part of our data that I have available to me. But when I went through all of 2013 to 2019, the running back quickly wasn't a factor in breakdowns. It's just data. I'm just making sure you know what I know.
Thank you. Go ahead, Rod.
Yeah, I think there needs to be some tweaking of this, these rules. I think you're gonna really cause harm to the fairs, and I'm talking for the other fairs. I'm not talking for Grants Pass because it's not really an issue at Grants Pass. But I know starting out, if you want to start out with 4 horses, you're going to end up with 2 or 3 horses, just because of scratch times and so on and so forth. That is not a good look for our racing fans to have 2 and 3 horse fields going into these races. If you don't start out with at least 5, you're going to end up, normally you'll end up with, you could scratch down to 4, still could scratch down to 3, but I try to have at least 6 in a field to end up with at least a 5-horse field. And so you start losing 1 or 2 of these horses in the fair meets, it's going to be devastating for the crowd, for the group, for the handle. My suggestion is the issue was a horse ran back to back and broke down. Let's have 1 day in between. And the 10 days, every so often, and this year falls into that category. If they ran the last weekend at Grants Pass and they wheel back at Prineville, that 10-day rule also eliminates them from running twice at Prineville. They could only run 1 time at Prineville with that 10-day rule. My suggestion on the 10-day is not to run more than 3 times in 10, or not to run more than 3 times in 10 days, and not run back-to-back days. I think that would be a good compromise for what happened and also not hurt the fairs.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the 1 day for, to see how it goes anyway. I don't think that will have a big impact like having to require 2 days off.
Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, and I guess I agree with that too. And I think it speaks, to at least at some level to what Commissioner Stein was talking about. At least you're making a change in the right direction. Yeah. And it gives us some time to work forward on this thing. I mean, the last thing we want to do is hurt the fairs. I mean, all of us, everybody in this room has spent a lot of years trying to build the fairs up, and we don't want to do anything that's going to tear them down.
Dr. Lombard, did you have another comment?
I agree with Rod's thought on this. Randy, I'll call you out a little bit. The most important thing is we're gonna ensure the welfare of the horse, and then the fair meets.
Any other comments on this topic?
Well,
Yeah.
I'd like to ask all the horsemen here, is there any thought about, with Northern California racing having basically been eliminated and they no longer will have fairs, do you get any input from people of interest in racing on the Oregon fairs?
Well, not that we've heard so far. I think, and this is just conjecture on my part, but I think if we do get any interest, it would probably occur more at the commercial meet in the fall, when the first level comes up a ways like that, before you're going to start to see the out-of-state people show any interest. But that's just my thought.
Rod?
So far with our stall applications, we have not seen any new California horses coming into Grants Pass. They're going to other places. They're going to Emerald Downs, and they're going to Wyoming. Our purse schedule is so low that those types of horses are not willing to come here at this point. Our fair level at 5,000 is less than half of what they're going to run for at Emerald Downs or Wyoming or some of these other states that have alternative gambling and better commercial race meets.
The hope actually, I think, would be that people have horses in Northern California that won't do it Santa Anita, that they will sell those horses to one of our Oregon people to use. And that's my hope, is that, you know, there's a certain quantity of horses that come out of there and go to trainers in Oregon, but the trainers from California, they'll stay down there or go somewhere else.
Any other comments, thoughts?
Oh, this is just, I guess, a point of order. Is there a way of having a rule that is not permanent? Such as the amended rule. I would personally, I would rather not have that set in stone, that we have to go back and re-amend the rule every year.
Jerry. Oh, sorry.
I'll-
Go ahead, Connie.
I think it was in the rules, the ORC rules, that the racing secretary can deny entry.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be that way at Portland Meadows anyway, could deny entry of any horse. So if anybody tries and enters 2 days in a row, I can just decline the entry.
But wouldn't you have to give them an explanation, Jerry?
Yeah.
Of, okay, here's our rule. Well,
I mean, we can get the word out between the HBPA and the quarter horse people and blast everything out, said you can't run 2 days in a row.
Okay.
So
It
that would
seems to
probably
me
be
that
the simplest.
it seems to me that would cause some problems. And I'm just thinking from a legal perspective, if I had a horse and you told me that I couldn't run 2 days in a row, but there was no rule anywhere that said that, where's your authority? I mean, I guess the OARs give you
Connie told
authority
me
to
to do
scratch
it.
anybody, but there's, but I you might get some pushback there.
Oh, yeah.
My experience with race secretaries is they can do whatever they want.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
All right. So you're kind of like a judge. You get to just do it and we'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it would be, really important so everybody knows that you can't run 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
And that's hard to get out.
Well, you can,
Yeah.
but I mean, in a way it isn't because you could print it right on the stall apps. You could
Yeah.
turn around and put it on all the overnights. I mean, there's ways to get it out there to where nobody's going to be able to say, "Oh, I didn't know about that."
Okay. Any other thoughts on this topic? I like the idea of a compromise, and even better, an idea of trying something without having to put a administrative regulation in place. I just don't. I'm trying to play that in my head, how feasible that is. And I guess you guys are all telling me it's totally feasible, so I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I think as long as we put it in the condition books, the stall app, the word will get out there that the racing secretary reserves the right to deny entry to any animal. They don't really have a leg to stand on. If we decide we want to change it next year, we can change the rule next year. It's not horrible.
Let's make
Besides-
Jerry the bad guy. I like it.
And besides, Jerry tells us what to do all the time now.
All right, so it's going to be a war against Jerry this summer.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm used to stuff like that.
You're
All right.
making Gary's job awful hard at these fair meets when you
Yeah, dude.
in the entries.
Well, I didn't mean to suggest you don't have the authority.
No.
All right, if there's no other comments on the, yes, go ahead, Dr. Stein.
No, I just want to say at least this summer we'll be able to compile data based
Mhm.
on, you know, this year. And I'm kind of concerned when people say, well, if we start out with 6, we'll end up with 4. That tells me there are 2 horses that have been entered that are lame. So, you know, I know horses get sick, but I am concerned about that. And so at least over the summer, we'll have a chance to see where the data lies, and then we can revisit this.
Yeah.
And I think it shows that we are doing something after the breakdown of the horse that ran back to back.
Yeah.
And I look back through our 4 days at Tillamook last year. We had 5 horses in every race. We scratched 2 in the paddock and 1 at the gate. Those were the only 3 4-horse fields that we ran. So it wasn't that people were entering sore horses. It was other things that were going on the racetrack.
Okay, well, if there's no other comments on that, Connie, I wasn't under the impression that we needed to make any decision here. We're just discussing this, correct?
So in the commission meeting, your recommendation will be not to go forward with this rule.
Gotcha.
And you'll
Yes.
explain why.
Yes,
And,
okay,
and what we propose as instead.
gotcha. Okay, perfect. Then moving on to our new business, which is a discussion on total carbon dioxide testing. Does someone want to give an introduction on this? Go ahead, Connie.
I'll start, and Dr. Lombard may want to also weigh in. This came up, Karen and I we have to have a new laboratory this year. Our laboratory that we've been using for testing lost their accreditation. So we found a new laboratory, and they asked us if we wanted to do this testing, stating that they get a lot of positives out of it from the milkshaking. And so my initial thought is, well, it makes sense to me. I don't know. I guess we need a rule for it. I know Dr. Lombard had some thoughts on it, and I think she should speak to that. And I'm just bringing it forward. Do we want to
I
have
think
rules on this? What do we want to do?
I think Dr. Stein might be able to talk more to this than I am able to because he's been doing it in California testing wise. We did it way back in the day in Oregon as a stall side test in the paddock to scratch horses before they even ran. It's a really time sensitive test, and the samples need to be collected at certain times and processed in a certain way. And so writing the protocol and making sure it's done right I think needs to be very carefully done. But I do think it's something that is happening in Oregon, and it's something that we
Yes.
need to have oversight over in a way. So I am in full support of it. It's just the implementation that I'm a little bit lost in still.
And that's the other thing I wanted to mention that I failed to is there is evidence to support the probability that this is occurring.
Yes, there is. Dr. Stein, please fill me in.
Well, a lot of the testing has changed over the years. So quite frankly, I'm not familiar with the methodology that laboratories are using, but clearly these laboratories that are accredited are performing the test. It's all regulated. They've got numbers, whatever, that they can withstand, legal challenges. So I'm really not concerned about that aspect of it. And there's no question, and I can tell you about stories that go back decades now about the effect it can have on horses. And it's quite frankly unfair to trainers and owners that, race their horses basically hay and oats and, have some guy stealing money from them. And that's my view on it. I've had it happen to me. I know lots of people have had it happen to them. So I think we do need the TCO2 testing. And if the laboratory can do it, by all means, they should be doing it.
And so can we get this done by this summer meets, Connie, I guess, without having something really to present to the commission today to move forward with the rulemaking process as far as protocol?
If you guys give me the authority to start the rulemaking process, I will find out what other jurisdictions have and have a rule for you for April.
Okay.
We actually, if you give me the rulemaking, we'll go ahead and submit it, and then we can tweak it if we need it to, so we can make sure that we can have it approved by May and
Perfect.
Get that communication out. We could even do an emergency rule to make it faster, but I'd rather have the time for people to weigh in and go to hearings.
Well, I would encourage the commissioners to move forward with this.
Rod? You're on mute.
I have a question about other medications that are being found that are new. Are those being added to our testing too, or how does that work? If this one's not something that just automatically being done, how about other medications?
So this is testing not for the medication itself, but for the metabolic effect on the horse. So we test for the metabolic response to this particular process, the milk shaking process. Any drugs that we're able to test for at our labs that are above the level of detection are automatically a positive test. So if it's a drug that can be tested and it pops positive at the lab, it's automatically positive. There are some drugs that we have a level of detection or a threshold for in our rules. And so if they are below that threshold, that is not a positive test for that. There's a little bit more nuance than that, but that's basically.
So the new drug that's been found in the quarter horse world, that's automatically being done?
I don't know which one you're speaking of. There's several.
Well, it's like clenbuterol. I don't have the name in front of me, but it's a drug that 12 horses have been tested positive in the All-American Fraternity and Derby.
Fraternity, yeah, that drug is tested by UC Davis. So that is on our list. It's metabolized differently, and so sometimes it can only be tested with hair.
Okay.
If we're talking about the same drug, but we can circle back on that.
Okay.
Connie?
I just want to bring it to everyone's attention that in the last, especially last summer, the girls were not doing a great job. And again, they're newer of getting the urine samples. We got a lot of blood samples, but not very many urine samples. And for those of you that aren't aware, the illegal drugs usually show up in the urine samples.
Okay.
we also are wondering if maybe that's one of the reasons why that lab was closed down. I don't know. So we're hoping that we'll get more urine samples, and this new lab that we're using will be doing a deeper dive and may find more. I mean, we're hoping they don't find anything. Let's be clear. We don't want any horses to have anything in them. But if people are abusing, we're hoping that increasing testing will help us find it.
And the lab that we're using this year, UC Davis, is pretty much the gold standard. I mean, they write the protocols for other labs often. So I'm very happy that that's changed.
So it sounds like we're in agreement that this is a good idea to go forward and start the process for this testing. Do we have a financial concern of additional cost, or is that not our concern?
I think it depends on the number of tests that we do. We may start out with just some spot checking and see if it shows to be a real problem. I don't think we have a choice but to spend the money.
Yeah. Okay.
I would suggest that any stake race be the ones we absolutely test.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many randoms. I'm not familiar with how many tests are done per day. It's the winner, and is there a random, or is there a limited number of randoms?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Connie. In the past, the stewards were allowed to do 30% additional horses per day, but that was several years ago. That was back in Portland days.
So it's there is no percentage, as many as they want, and it's a steward or the veterinarian, and I can give input on that as well. We always test the winner. If it's worth any money, the purse is bigger. We're going to test the first 3. If it's a quarter horse, we're going to do hair tests, and we've been averaging between 2 and 7 randoms on top of that.
And
That's
just
kind
to
of
narrow
what-
it down a little bit, this extra test that we're talking about for the TCO2, I don't see any reason to test quarter horses for that. It's one that's more used in our distance horses.
I'd
Well,
say
any of the
maybe if they're
quarter-
going all the way around the track, but that's it, just for
Hook
the,
race, yeah.
And any of the quarter horses that are in the big stakes are hair tested, like Connie said. So that would come up in that, would it not, Dr. Ellis?
The
no.
TCO2 would not show up in the hair test.
Okay.
The other drugs that Rod's talking about and we're worried about popping up in California and New Mexico right now, those do show up on our hair test.
Okay, so then where do we leave this then, Connie? We revisit with some verbiage?
No, I would like to recommend, since there's a strong interest in going forward and we are running out of time, that we recommend to start the rulemaking process. We'll find a standard rule that's out there. I will probably shoot it over to Dr. Stein, and then we'll file that, and then we'll go through the rulemaking process. And if we need to make changes on it, we can tweak it during the next 45 days, would be my recommendation, to give as much time as possible for people to be aware of it.
Great. And then is that something that the commission needs to vote on in our meeting, or that's, okay,
It's an agenda item. When you give your briefing, you can discuss it. And
Okay.
when we get to that, I'll ask if we have a vote in agreement on what you've discussed, and we'll move forward.
perfect.
So that's the full commission. We don't need to make a motion right now for the committee.
We don't have a quorum, which is intentional.
Okay.
So you just need to agree that that's what you guys want to do, and then Lindsay will go, Commissioner Fowler will go forward.
Okay. Sounds good. Any public comment on anything? I know I've taken a lot of comments as we've gone, but my agenda says now's the time for more public comment. So does anybody have any comments? Seeing none. And I think we just need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second that. All in favor? Okay. Then we
Thanks,
are
everybody.
adjourned. Thanks for your input, everyone. See you at 1:30.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.